Welcome back. Now that we have the ability to maneuver throughout our world, and we have different ways of doing so, it's time to learn about the different ways that we can look at our world and the options for changing the way we see our world. So this brings us to some of the icons up here at the top. Now, I'm not going to touch on these to the right just yet. We're going to move over here to the left. And I'd like to bring your attention to the show icon. And if you click that, we suddenly have lots of options. Now, these are settings, also known as flags. We see under common show flags that each of these flags or options either has a checkbox next to it or it doesn't. Now, checkbox means that that flag is enabled and we're seeing objects that belong to the categories associated with these flags. There's a lot here, and if I went over every single item, I would overwhelm you. So I'm going to point out a few of the easy to grasp items here. Let's take a look at static meshes. We see that static meshes is checked here. If we uncheck static meshes, all of a sudden our props are gone. We have no floor, we have no table, chairs, or statue. So this must mean that those things are static meshes because we just unchecked static meshes. And if I check it back, well, then those objects are back. So we know so far that those objects are static meshes. Now, I'd like to point out that collision here is unchecked. Let's go ahead and check that one. Now that I've checked collision, let's take a look at these static meshes a little more closely. Notice that there are these outlines around the static meshes, and these are showing us the collision volumes associated with these meshes. The collision volumes allow the engine to perform physics calculations in a much more efficient manner. You see, under the hood, the engine handles lots of things like physics and collisions. Now, for two objects to collide with one another, the engine does need to make some computations, taking into account the data of those collision volumes that are hitting each other. If those collision volumes are much simpler, then those calculations can be performed faster, and we can have a more performant game. So that is why we see these more primitive shapes surrounding these static meshes. So any mesh that has a collision volume like this can more efficiently interact with other objects in the world from a physics standpoint. Now I'm going to click Show and uncheck Collision, as we don't really need to see that anymore, but it's useful to know that those collision volumes are there. Now we can show or hide any number of things, including lots of lighting and post-processing effects. And if you like, I encourage you to go through and check and uncheck things and see the effects of enabling or disabling them. But that's enough for this demonstration. We're going to move on. Now, next to show is this icon that says lit. And if you click that, we have different view modes. Now, lit is showing us what this world would look like from a lighting standpoint in the actual game. If we change the view mode to unlit, we suddenly see that there are no shadows. Everything is very bright. Lighting is not affecting the scene. Now, this can be useful for working in dark areas where you don't have very many light sources, but if you're showing off your game, you're not going to want to show it to someone in unlit view mode. Now, after unlit, we see wireframe. Let's select that. Now this is an interesting one. This shows us the geometry in our world in wireframe. And if we look closely, we can see individual edges to the polygons in each mesh. And if you look up, you'll notice that the wireframe for the level that we're in looks like a giant sphere. That's our sky sphere. It's an actual sphere, and it's pretty ginormous. I'm going to get out of wireframe mode. And there are a number of other modes. And again, you can change to each of these modes and read their tooltips and see what each of them looks like. But for now, it's enough that you know about these. I'm going to go back to lit, and now our level looks normal again. Now, the next icon over says perspective. Perspective mode means that objects farther away are going to look smaller, much like they do in real life. In addition to perspective mode, we have various orthographic modes. corresponding to the different sides of the world. For instance, if we click top, we're now looking at our props from the top in orthographic mode. So objects that are farther away are not going to appear smaller. And we can right click to drag around. This is in 2D space now. We can zoom in with the mouse wheel and we can zoom out. Now we can view the scene from the bottom or from the sides, and this allows us to position things precisely according to the grid, and it can be useful in certain circumstances. Now I'm going to go back to perspective and bring your attention all the way up to the top right. We see this little round icon. If we click on that, it splits up our viewport into 4 separate viewports. And as you can see, the bottom left is a perspective mode viewport, whereas the other 3 are in different orthographic views. So this can be useful. And notice that each individual viewport has its own set of icons, including the top rightmost icon, which allows us to maximize that viewport. Now, you might maximize one of the orthographic viewports, in which case you can simply click that same icon at the top right and get back to perspective view. Okay, so now we know about perspective versus orthographic. The very, very leftmost icon here has a number of other options, and there are quite a few. I'm going to point out a couple. Show FPS will show us our frames per second. And by the way, these are the shortcut keys for the features that have shortcuts. So Control-Shift-H is for show FPS. Now I'm going to select that, and notice I see my FPS over to the right, and it's rapidly changing, and that's because FPS rapidly changes. It's not consistent from one frame to the next, but you see that I'm hovering somewhere close to 120, which is very good FPS. Now, we'll talk more about FPS, frames per second, and its significance to the game in future videos, but I'm just showing you how you can enable that. Now, I'm going to let you explore the rest of these on your own as a practice exercise. However, I would like to point out these bookmarks here. Notice the side menu that pops out for bookmarks has 3 options: jump to bookmark 1, jump to bookmark 2, and jump to bookmark 3. And the shortcuts for these are the 1, 2, and 3 keys. Let's see what happens when we jump to bookmark 1. Well, our view has snapped to this location right here. Now, jump to bookmark 2 was assigned the hotkey number 2, so I'm going to hit 2 on my keyboard, and now I've jumped to bookmark 2. And if I hit 3, I've jumped to bookmark 3. So I can jump to these bookmarks, which are essentially positions for our camera. And if I go back to this menu, go back to bookmarks, we see there's an option to set a bookmark, and we have bookmarks 0 through 9. And these have hotkeys Control plus the number associated with that bookmark. So Control 4 will assign a 4th bookmark. So what I'd like to do is position my camera somewhere like right here and hit Control 4. Now I've placed a bookmark here. Now I can hit 1 on my keyboard to go back to 1, and if I hit 4, I go back to my 4th bookmark. Now let's say I don't like that bookmark. I can go back, and under bookmarks, I have clear bookmark. I can select bookmark 4, and now moving my view to somewhere else, if I hit the 4 key, I do not go back to my 4th bookmark. I've cleared that one. But Control 4 will give me another bookmark, and moving to another position and hitting Control 5 will place a bookmark there, and hitting the 4 and 5 keys allows me to go back to those bookmarks. So bookmarks are a nice way to place locations in our level that we can easily go to without needing to maneuver our way over. I'm going to go ahead and clear bookmarks 4 and 5 as I created them simply for demonstration purposes. Now, a couple things to cover before we wrap up this video. Notice we have Game View, and its shortcut is G. Let's click on Game View. Now, notice what happens. A lot of those hovering objects appear to be gone. I'm going to hit the G key, and they're back. Now, we haven't discussed what these objects are. They're kind of just floating there. But if we hit the G key, all of those things are gone because we're in Game View. This is what the game will look like without all of those other objects that are normally invisible when playing the game. So G allows us to toggle between seeing those things and hiding them. Now let's click this menu again and notice immersive mode, which has the hotkey F11. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit F11 and notice that we have our level editor viewport full screened. And if I hit the G key, I can enter game view while in immersive mode. So this is great. Let's say we've just created a beautiful level and we'd like a nice screenshot. Well, we can remove all those invisible objects with G to go to game view, and we can toggle F11 to full screen and go to immersive mode. Now, you might know a couple ways to take screenshots, but we actually have the ability to take a high resolution screenshot from within Unreal Engine. And that's by going to the topmost hamburger icon and selecting high resolution screenshot. Now, select that, and we have a control panel for taking high res screenshots. We can even specify the region with this tool here. Now, if I click this, I see please specify capture rectangle, and I can click and drag to get myself a rectangle and then accept my changes with the check mark. And of course, I have several other options, but I can ultimately click capture. Now, a pop-up shows me where this capture has been saved to. I see that it's been saved to a screenshots folder in my project itself. It's in my project/saved screenshots Windows editor. And here's my high resolution image. So that's a great way to get high res screenshots in our project. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of that and hit G to disable game view and hit F11 to come back out of immersive mode. And now I'm in my regular level editor back to where I started. So in this lecture, we learned a little bit more about the view modes, how we can change them, and how bookmarks allow us to jump to locations that we've sort of saved or bookmarked throughout our level, and how game view and immersive mode allow us to look at our level without the clutter of the various objects that are normally invisible. Great job! In the next lecture, we'll learn how to manipulate the objects in our world. I'll see you soon.